What is up, YouTube? If you don't know me yet, I'm Dallin. I work for @Carbonfi, carbonfi.com, making carbon fiber wedding rings, or just cool glow rings as well. Today I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can make your own carbon fiber ring with 3 separate methods. If you like what you see, don't forget to smash that like button, completely destroy it, and subscribe to me because I have very few subscribers. Thanks. Okay, so the first method I'm going to show you is called the carbon fiber plate method, or the side cut method. The way to do this is to make a carbon fiber plate and then cut out a ring blank from the side of it. And what I mean by that is that we're going to stack up a bunch of layers of carbon fiber fabric. We're going to solidify them by putting epoxy resin in between each layer, and then we're going to cut out with 2 different size hole saws a ring blank. So right here, all I'm doing is measuring out the fabric that I'm going to be needing to make my carbon fiber plate. And I'm just using some painter's tape just to make some lines for me to cut through. This prevents fraying, and it also allows me to get an accurate measurement so my layers are all about the same size. And right here, I'm going to start putting them together, one on top of another with some epoxy resin. As you can see, I have a 3-to-1 super viscous, or not viscous, I don't know which way it goes, infusion resin, so it's super runny. And I'm just going to paint it on each layer with this brush. And I actually removed a lot of the tape from each layer of carbon fiber fabric, which did end up causing me some fraying, but I didn't worry about it too much. I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem. And I'm just stacking them here on top of this solid carbon fiber plate that has a layer of plastic on top of it. And this is just because once the epoxy hardens up, it won't stick to the carbon fiber plate and ruin it. I'll be able to rip it off easily. And as you can see here, I put a layer of peel ply, that was the fabric that had a few lines on it, on top of the carbon fiber, along with a layer of that cotton breather fabric. This will absorb any excess resin, and the peel ply will allow me to rip it off. Because I don't want too much resin in there, I want it to be mostly just carbon fiber. And here I'm sticking it all inside of a Ziploc vacuum bag. I got this on Amazon. I'm trying to make this as DIY as possible because I have a much better way to do this, but this is the way that I'm choosing to do because I think it'd be a very cost-efficient way if someone just bought a square meter of carbon fiber and wanted to make their own ring. Eventually my vacuum bag gave out, didn't work very well. I'm pretty disappointed with it, so I clamped it down with another layer of carbon fiber. And here I'm just removing everything. You should probably do this with some gloves. I didn't, but I didn't have too much of an issues, even though there were some sharp edges. And here's the finished product. Here's our carbon fiber plate. Honestly, not too shabby for the lack of time that I put into this. I'm sure it's riddled with air bubbles and voids and stuff, but you can actually work around that in the ring making process. But here I'm just trimming it up on the tile saw just to make sure that I have a nice even surface, because I don't want to cut into a side and have a really wonky lopsided ring. So I'm just cutting off all the excess frays that were hanging off the edges here. So now we're going to move on over to the drill press, where we're going to cut out a ring blank. We actually have a ton of hole saws that we can cut out. These are diamond hole saws made for tile cutting. And we have a ton of sizes of these hole saws, so it's really easy to get a really accurate blank depending on what size of ring you're trying to make. Also, make sure to use water, have a vacuum running, and have a mask on when you're cutting carbon fiber. Now we're moving over to the lathe. This is a process that's going to be repeated for each different carbon fiber ring. As you can see, I'm just trying to trim down my ring. It actually fell off at one point. But I put it on this expanding ring mandrel. I'm just going to shape it and make it a nice comfortable ring here. I actually probably should do a lot more finishing steps than I did, but just because the purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to make a carbon fiber ring, I'm not going to show you each of those steps, but in my later and previous videos, you can probably find out how I do that. So now I'm just going to finish up the ring just by doing the sides and the inside of the ring, by clamping it down in between the jaws of the lathe real quick. This process can be a little bit scary, and I bet I'll take a lot of heat from a lot of machinists out there, but I've been doing this for a long time, never had a problem with it, and it gets the job done. I'm going to showcase each ring at the end of the video, so stick around to see how it turned out. Now I'm going to show you how to do method number 2. This is called the winding method. It makes a cool marbly pattern. The first thing you're going to do is find a bead like I have right here, or a tube, or something just cylindrical that is about the same size as your finger, and then wrap it in between 2 plates like I have here of PVC board. You're going to want to coat the PVC board and the bead or rod or whatever you're using in some kind of mold release, so I'm just using some purple PVA here. And PVA mold release is great because it creates a physical barrier in between the resin and whatever you're trying to not get it stuck to. Now right here is why it's called the winding method. We're just getting some carbon fiber filament string that we got from a layer of our carbon fiber fabric. And then we're just going to wind it around our spool that we created as many times as we can. I actually went and got more filament after this clip and wound it a little bit more. And then every time I'm just dabbing it with a little bit of epoxy resin. It's the same resin that we used to glue the carbon fiber together in the first process. And this will bond it together really well again. And if you do this process right and create a really tight bond in between each layer, then you shouldn't have any voids or any bubbles in between to worry about. So now leave the resin cure overnight, and then the next day you should be able to peel everything apart. The PVA worked wonderfully. Everything came apart really easy except for the parts where I super glued the bead and the board together. I probably could have thought of a way to get around this, but it wasn't too much of a problem. I just threw it here on the lathe. Then just with the cutters of the lathe, I just worked it until eventually I got the bead out, which took some work, but eventually it worked and I was able to push it out. The PVA worked fine as well. After getting the bead out, I just wanted to square everything up when I put it on the mandrel, so I squared up the sides here, trimmed out the inside just to make sure everything would be nice and smooth when I put it on the expanding mandrel again. So now once I got that edge square on the mandrel, I'm ready to clean up the other edge, square it up, and shape the ring to size. So this is actually probably my favorite method and probably most difficult method out of the three to make the ring. It was really easy here to shape the ring just with using some 80 grit sandpaper and then sanding it smooth. And then after sanding it smooth, I did do some finishing steps that I probably should have done on the previous ring because this ring didn't have a good finish at all. So here I'm just using a CA glue finish, and this will cover up any voids or anything in the ring and give it a nice glossy finish. I would also be worried about not finishing the ring, that you would get some fibers and stuff poking out into your hand, and that would probably be very uncomfortable for the wearer. So this process is very important. You have to do some kind of finishing on the ring, some external coat to make this ring really shiny and have a good luster, and also to be very comfortable for the wearer. I was very pleased with the marbling pattern that came out after the polishing step. After finishing the outside, now it's time to do the inside, so I'm just making everything nice and comfortable, rounding the edges, making sure they're nice and square, not sharp, or nothing poking out. And then just like when we did the top, I'm going to do a CA glue finish on the inside, which is a bit more tricky, but I found a way to do it. You have to be kind of quick with your hands just so the CA glue doesn't dry up on you. But it worked, and I made a really nice finish on the inside. It's also probably worth mentioning that when you do a CA glue finish, it's very important that you have a clean ring. There's no dust or debris on it, which is something that I didn't do exactly right when I switched the ring sides, which is something I probably could have worked on in the future. And now we're on to our final method, the tube method, which I actually made a title for. I have this carbon fiber tube. It's pretty beat up and a little old, but the reason that I chose it is because it's pretty thick and it's the right size to make a ring, and you can make a lot of different sizes with this one tube. These tubes are available to purchase at a lot of different stores. I'll try to put a link down in the description. But the first thing you're going to do is use a tile saw, a chop saw, Dremel, whatever you have available to cut a ring blank out. I made mine kind of wide just to make sure that I have enough tube to work with. But just like last times, I'm going to square it up on the lathe first before I put it on the mandrel, because I always do the outside first and then the inside. And the reason for that is because once you do the inside, you make a rounded fit, and it makes it a lot more difficult to put it on the expanding mandrel. You need a nice square and flat surface to put it on there. So So now that we have it on the ring mandrel, we can shape it and make it exactly the thickness that we want. And just right here, I want to stress the importance again. If you're working with carbon fiber, well, if you're cutting it, you do need to wear a respirator and have a vacuum and use water, wet sand, just like I'm doing here. Because carbon fiber dust is kind of dangerous. Well, it's very dangerous, and you do not want to breathe it into your lungs. You can see here I'm making a dome fit just with the sandpaper. I really prefer the dome fit because I think it's the most comfortable fit. Most professional rings do have at least a little bit of a dome or a bevel on the edges just to make the edges more comfortable for the wearer. So now after sanding and polishing both the inside and the outside, we are finished with the tube method, the easiest method of making a carbon fiber ring. And there you have it. Here's our rings. These are 3 different carbon fiber rings made from 3 very different methods. This is our winding method ring right here. The polished CA glue finish showing out really nicely, and I'm trying to show you here the inside marbling pattern I was talking about. I thought it turned out really pretty. It was something that none of the other rings had. The second one I'm showing you here is the side cut method ring. This is the pretty standard method that we use. Unfortunately, this ring did have some pinholes that could have been fixed by doing some kind of clear finish on top, but it still turned out pretty cool, and you can still see the waves in the carbon fiber from the side cut, which I really like. And last but not least, the easiest ring to make, the tube method ring, comes out with this cool pattern which you see from each layer of the carbon fiber weave. I was very pleased with how beautiful this ring turned out.